Hello, I'm Rick Helmus, and it's my pleasure to interview Bruce Parker today. Bruce Parker was on the Eastern Montana College campus when the football program was terminated, but Bruce has 40-some years in athletic administration, sports announcing, those kinds of things. So we're going to pick his brain a little bit as to what he experienced back in the day when football was dropped at Eastern Montana. So welcome, Bruce. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Rick. It's my pleasure to be here. You know, I do have a little bit of history because I was going to school at Eastern Montana College at that time, and it was a real disappointing time for me.
Sure. I was going to ask you, my first question was going to be, you were at Billings Senior for all these years, born and raised there, and you chose Eastern. What went into your decision to go to Eastern at that time?
Well, initially, I was going to play football for the Yellow Jackets, and then I had some back injuries and some problems with health, and I ended up playing tennis for 4 years for the Yellow Jackets, and I got to play tennis for a football coach, Bob Lee, the legendary Robert E. Lee.
Our old football coach.
So I enjoyed that. So I went there and had 4 great years at Eastern Montana College. And then I got into radio. I started doing the Yellow Jackets games on the radio along with Billings Senior games and Red Lodge games. And I got into the sports broadcasting world and really had a great 4 years at Eastern Montana College. What a wonderful institution.
Now, let me ask you a little bit about some of your off-campus activities too, because at the time you were fairly young, but you got into broadcasting, as I understand it. You were part of an athletic committee. Tell us a little bit about the things that you did on campus at that time.
Well, you know, I just didn't want to be somebody that went to class. I wanted to be involved with the campus, so I was elected a student senator, so I was on the student senate for 2 years. And then I was appointed as the only student on the athletic commission. So I got to be involved with the athletic director, the president, the faculty and staff as they discussed athletics at Eastern Montana College. And really, I think they took my input, and I think it was really a great committee to be on because they listened to what the students felt was important, and I thought that was really a good thing.
Now, about halfway through, as I understand it, your collegiate career at Eastern, new president came on board, John Van de Wettering, came in from Missoula. Did you notice any changes either on campus academically or within the athletic department because of his arrival?
Well, you know, I didn't. I didn't see many changes other than the fact that he was a chancellor that was involved with athletics, and he was going to make some of the decisions that took place in the athletic department. And you know, he's a guy that would come to games and be involved with the activities. And at the time, I thought it was really going to be good for Eastern Montana College, and being involved with the student on the athletic commission as a student. You know, I liked John Van de Wettering as our chancellor, and then things started changing a little bit. They wanted to kind of rework what the athletic department was all about, and that affected football, as we know what happened. And I just didn't think it was a good thing for the school.
At the time, I was going to Montana State University, rodeoing there, where I'd played football at Eastern in the 60s. And we got a call from head coach Dana Woodring, who was an assistant coach while I was there, and talking about at that time in 76, after Mr. Van de Wettering showed up, about terminating the football program. So he asked us to write letters, which we did. I don't know if they obviously didn't have enough impact on keeping the football program. But what was, if we could step back just a second before we finish up on the football subject, what was the campus life like at the time? And you said that Dr. Van de Wettering you didn't think changed some of the campus life. So what was it like? What, did you spend time in the sub? Did you do things together? Did you do things with organization? What was that like?
Well, you know, Rick, it's easy for me to say this. The dorms were full. The food services were always crowded. Lots of things were done on campus. Great friendships that we still have to this day with guys that played football at Eastern Montana College. I can still remember when the Yellow Jackets went down and beat Northern Arizona in football.
Absolutely.
How big was that? There were some great times with football. You know, campuses without football, I mean, it doesn't make for a very good homecoming activity, does it?
No.
You know, what football does, Rick, and I think is so important, is, to me, especially these days, it's an enrollment initiative. It brings lots of students to campus. It just doesn't bring the football players. It might bring their brother and sister or their cousins or their next door neighbor to go to school there as well. It brings their girlfriends to come to that school. You know, it really helps with enrollment. And I think there's a lot of schools right now in Montana, if they didn't have football, the doors would close. And, you know, football, if they have a roster of 127 students, that adds up to a lot of people. And it really, enrollment's a big issue right now with all the schools in Montana.
Absolutely. I think the studies that Big Huddle has looked at, the multiplier on the low side is 2 other students per football player. So if there's 100 football players, there's 300. You know, that's a sum total of 300 new kids on campus. Before we talk about some of the things that you did at other institutions in your career, let's talk about that last couple of years at Eastern. You said Mr. Van der Wettering started tweaking the athletic department. Can you tell us a little bit about what led up to the football decision?
Well, you know, I think that between the chancellor and the athletic director, they had some grandiose ideas about trying to make basketball a national power. And Yellow Jacket basketball has always been very, very good. Dominated in the NAI, went to the national tournament. Guys like Cass Ione and Roy McPipe and people like that we remember.
Jim Soft.
Huge crowds in the arena. It was a lot of fun to go to basketball games. When I was a student there, basketball was a happening, and football was good too. You know, we'd go down, and the games were at Dallas Stadium, and they had big games down there. Had a great rivalry with Rocky Mountain College and other Frontier Conference schools, and campus life was very good, exciting, lots of things going on, and I think football had a lot to do with that. I know that in my days at Montana State University in Bozeman, that football is a big thing, and it makes homecoming at Rocky Mountain College. And of course, my 11 years at Carroll College, the football program brought national prominence to Carroll College, although academics is the number one thing at all these institutions,
Always.
at Rocky, at Carroll, at now at MSUB, academics is a big deal, but it just adds to the campus life. And it's such a great deal, especially when you can play on campus. It's very important.
Absolutely. There is now currently here at this time in the history of Billings and the county and the city, there's a discussion of realigning facilities for high schools, and at the same time there's possibly an initiative to build a stadium on campus at MSUB, and so the two would be separate, and a lot of people aren't going to understand why it's so important to have that stadium on a campus, but unequivocally our Big Huddle studies show that the most successful football programs in the country that are involved with this student enrollment initiative have stadiums on campus, otherwise the students don't come.
Well, I'll talk about 3 facilities that are on campus. One, I spent 23 years at Montana State University in Bozeman, and the remake of Reno H. Sales Stadium into Bobcat Stadium, look what it's done for that school.
20,000.
And what it's done for the football program, and what it's done for the traffic in Bozeman.
Yeah.
But, and it's just done
a whole other subject.
And I think President Cosato has done an amazing job supporting athletics, and what they've done with that football program under Jeff Choate and the great things that are happening in Bozeman with that institution is amazing. Carroll College building the stadium on campus at Nelson Stadium.
Right.
It's a beautiful facility. They've done a great job with it. And, you know, they used to play their games at Vigilante Stadium, which is the high school stadium that Helena High and Helena Capital play on. It was down away from campus, and they just didn't draw anybody. And then, of course, at Rocky Mountain College, I think, you know, I'm very proud of the fact that I was part of the remake of Herb Clint Field. Under Bob Wilmoth and Brad Nason, what they did at Rocky with that football stadium really rejuvenated the campus and rejuvenated football at Rocky Mountain College. So facilities on campus are very, very important. I just don't think it makes sense to have them somewhere way away that the students can't get to by walking out of their dorm rooms.
National Football Foundation data would support every word of that. Before we go on too far, that 77, 78 were pivotal years for keeping the football program at Eastern back then. 78, the decision was made. Can you tell us about that last few months or the last days of football at Eastern?
Yeah, you know, it kind of came up quick for the football players, you know, and I to this day I feel sad for them because they enjoyed Billings they enjoyed being at Eastern Montana College, and a lot of them left and went to play at other institutions.
Right.
But as a member of the athletic commission, it was brought up and talked about, and these were the plans that the administration wanted to have with the football program, and they were going to take that money and really ramp up basketball and really ramp up tennis and really ramp up track and field. And at the time, even gymnastics under Coach Jay Shaw was a very big program there. And so they were going to make the other sports stronger by taking the football money away. And most of us on the athletic commission fought it. But as we all know, it's kind of like having mom and dad. They have their votes mean more than the kids when you have a family vote. Well, the athletic director and the chancellor's votes meant more, and this is the way they wanted to go with the program. They had a good plan. To this day, I think Woody Hahn was a great athletic director at MSUB, and I just didn't feel that this was the right decision for our institution. So they called me in as a student. They wanted me to be on their side and back up their decision that they were about to make. And I said, I don't agree with it. So, I can't do that. My conscience won't allow me to say, yeah, this is the right thing to do. I had too many friends that were on the football team, and I knew what that meant to the school. So I went across the street, and the students had gathered in the park across from now MSU Billings, and they had a kegger, and they hung a couple administrators in effigy that were hanging up on a tree, and dummies, and they were dummies of those people. And
we got that.
we took it as an opportunity to have another party, and I think show our disdain that the decision was made. But and then we did the best we could with it. The football program went away, and I can still remember doing the Eastern Montana College football games on Cook Radio. I was the voice of the Yellow Jackets throughout my college career. And I got to do a game, and I still remember this as one of the most enjoyable games I've ever done, radio or TV, was Eastern Montana College against Rocky Mountain College at Dela Stadium. And I was doing the game for the Yellow Jackets, and my brother was a starter on the Rocky football team. So it really meant a lot to me. And it's so great. Is there anything more fun than going to a college football game on a Saturday? And what it does, it's just it was really disappointing when football went away at Eastern Montana College.
50 years later, my wife and I still have season tickets to the Bobcats. We still showing up in those stands on Saturday. So you disagreed with that decision, and that was 1978.
1978.
Some observations maybe that we can discuss a little bit. Looking back through some of the numbers on campus, when I got to Eastern in 1967, it was the first time they'd gone over 3,000 students. Shortly after football was dropped, I believe early 80s, they got over 4,000 for the first time. But from that point on, and certainly from 92, 94 area, whenever the name change was, they've had a real problem attracting traditional students. In your mind, can you say anything from the 40 years experience you've had with athletics? And by the way, you didn't give yourself enough credit on that Rocky facility. That is just gorgeous. When I went up there the year after that was done and watched them play Carroll that first game, I think it was 5,000 people on those hillsides. It was fantastic. But if football were to return to MSUB, or hopefully someday Eastern Montana University, something to that effect, what can you say from your experience will be some of the positive results?
Well, it can tie the community back into your institution. I think it's done that at Rocky Mountain College, and I think that was President Wilmoth coming up. That was his view of what was going to happen. And Billings Central plays all their games there on a Friday night.
Right.
So we brought Billings Central and all the schools that they play at home see the Rocky campus now, and I think that would bring people back to Eastern Montana, and it's hard for me. I still call it Eastern Montana College.
Absolutely, I do
know
too.
It's Montana State Billings, but I was an Eastern Montana College grad, And I think it would really tie the community of Billings back into what I think is a wonderful institution. Academically great at MSU Billings. I think Chancellor Edelman has a great view of the campus and where it needs to go and what they need to do. I think Krista Montague is an outstanding athletic director and could really make things happen there, and I think she will. And I'd like to see the enrollment go up. I'd like to see more people come to campus. I'd like to see more students living in the dorms. I'd like to see the enrollment just skyrocket at MSU Billings, and I think that can happen. You know, with things like bringing back football and adding other sports, which I think they've done a nice job with. But now I think football is the one that's on the table.
And so, in your mind, timing might be right because of the losses, what they've learned from them, and the program that's being built. One thing you brought up athletic director Krista Montague. In her tenure there, if you look at the grade point averages of scholastics of those 300 and some athletes that are on campus, I mean, they are far superior to the average campus.
Yeah, you can't be a collegiate athlete without being pretty smart, because you have to be a great time manager.
And maybe work ethic.
Yeah, and you know, when teams are good, you know, the years that I was at Carroll College, did Carroll have the best athletes in the country? I would say probably other schools had better athletes, but they weren't smarter athletes. And I think one of the reasons that Carroll was so good is they had student athletes that were there to get educated and get their degrees, not just to get a degree, but to get educated. And they made good decisions on the field, and they made good decisions off the field. And I believe that's happening right now at Rocky Mountain College, with great student athletes, smart student athletes. And I think, you know, that picture of they're going to bring in the dumb football player, that doesn't happen. It
doesn't apply anymore.
That's a cartoon, and it doesn't happen anymore. And I think that the schools that have strong football programs have guys that make good decisions, especially in the state of Montana. And I know that when I was at Eastern Montana College, the guys that played football there were very good students, very good in the classroom, part of student senate, you know, were involved in activities on campus. Mm-hmm. And it just made for a better picture on the campus. And I'd like to see something like that happen again at Eastern Montana College, is what I'll call it.
Sure. I don't think we can let you go without letting you kind of share some of the accolades, the awards, and the Hall of Fame ceremonies that you've been a part of here lately, which you've earned every one of them. But can you share with our audience the halls that you've just been inducted into?
Well, yeah, thanks, Rick. That's nice of you to bring that up. I was fortunate to be elected to the NAIA Hall of Fame. So I went down to Florida, West Palm Beach, in April, and was inducted into the NAIA Hall of Fame. And then in June, I was elected and was inducted into the National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics. It goes by NACDA Hall of Fame. That's all the athletic directors in the country at different levels: Division I, Division II, Division III, NAIA, junior college, and all of them. So
across the board.
Yeah, I was the only NAIA person to go into their Hall of Fame at the time, and those are great honors for me. But perhaps one of the biggest honors that I had this year was to be inducted, and that was 2 weeks ago, into the Carroll College Hall of Fame. I spent 11 years as a director of athletics at Carroll, and I went into the Hall of Fame with a great class, which included Mike Van Diest, who I think is as fine a football coach as there is in the country. And
his record would indicate that.
Yeah, 203 wins, 6 national championships, 2 other times in the national title game where they were finished as runner-up, and a better person than he is a football coach. And he's a great football coach. So he built men that came there as boys and they left as men, and a lot of them are doctors and lawyers and very successful in business. So when you go to Carroll, when you go to Rocky, when you go to MSU Billings, you're there to get educated and get a degree. Right. And participating in sports is secondary, but it's a means to an end too. And boy, does it do a lot for the campus and create some interest on campus. But yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up about the Hall of Fames. And you know, another one that's going to happen this fall at Rocky is I'm going to be awarded the Swede Kennison Award. I think people are probably familiar with Ron Swede Kennison out of Butte, one of the big time commissioners of the Frontier Conference, and I'm going to get the Swede Kennison Award this year. So that happens when you retire. You know, you get awards sometimes, and I've been very fortunate.
You've earned them.
You know, as I talked to you earlier about that, none of these awards are about me; they're about we. Great staff, great coaches that I worked with, great assistants, and tremendous student athletes. And I think, you know, there's a lot of campuses that if they didn't have athletics, the doors would close. So athletics is very important to colleges and their futures.
For our audience out there, based on what you just said, maybe we should ask you that there are some common ingredients into a successful program. You're talking about a school president, an athletic director, coach of a particular sport. In this case, if we're talking about bringing football back to Eastern Montana College or MSUB now, would you agree that the coach's selection, the athletic director selection, which is already in place with Krista Montague and her leadership, looks like it's high quality based on the production of the athletes that are there? Adding football with Dr. Edelman, the only other ingredient that we need to go out and look for to kind of put a plan in place looks like that kind of a coach that can recruit, can lead young men, develop young men, and choose a variety of assistant coaches. Yeah, what do you have to add to that?
Well, I think hiring a coach, and I think the world of Krista. I think she's a good manager. I think she's probably a good person to work for. She's good in the community. And her biggest role is, if football came back, would be to hire a great football coach. Go out, and I think Montana State University Billings has a lot to offer to coaches. The community of Billings is amazing. You know, I was gone 40 years, and it was important for me and my wife Lisa to come back to Billings and end my career here. And I think Krista has she's hired good people.
Absolutely.
She hired Mick Durham to come and run her basketball program. Kevin Wooden has done a great job with the women's program. Her selection of coaches has been outstanding.
Baseball coaches have all been quality.
Yeah, amazing. And the key is to hire a good coach, have him be able to have the ability to hire good assistants, and then go out and recruit and bring good student athletes, top-notch student athletes to MSU Billings. And I think that's very important. Look what it's done for Bozeman at Montana State University.
Absolutely.
And the resurgence of their football program under Jeff Choate and President Quizzato and Leon, their athletic director. He's done an amazing job too, and they've been able to raise funds. And I think when you have successful athletic programs, it's a lot easier for the campus in general to go out and raise money for the school. I think it would help Bill Kennedy and his plate and with his staff to raise money and institutional advancement at MSU Billings. And Bill Kennedy's a sharp guy, as we all know.
Absolutely.
And can raise money and has great connections, and I think it would help MSU Billings in the long run.
Yeah, to that point, finish raising the money now. The science building construction is in progress at Bozeman. You mentioned another $18 million for the north end zone project to be finished, and it wasn't that long ago that they had to have the 12 for the south end zone. So I think you're right. Success looks like it breeds success.
And they're building new dorms. And there's one reason you build new dorms. It's because you have more students and you don't have room for the ones that are coming in.
Right.
So if your school is expanding and their enrollment's way up,
absolutely,
it helps.
You add faculty because you're adding programs, because you're adding students. Success breeds success. I like Dr. Edelman's goal of 7,000 students on campus.
Wow, wouldn't that be good for the city of Billings?
The economic impact itself is mind-boggling. Let alone if there's 3,000 more students at $10,000 apiece. That's $30 million bucks.
Be millions and millions of dollars
exactly.
to help. But
300 students is $3 million.
And you know what I'd like to say too, as an alum of Eastern Montana College / MSU Billings is I like the open-mindedness of the administration. Chancellor Edelman and Krista Montague, they're listening. They're listening to the Big Huddle.
Absolutely.
And I think the Big Huddle has
And
done
in
an
10 years,
amazing
we
job.
haven't had a lot of that in the 5 predecessors.
Yeah.
So you're right.
And I think, that's a positive. Now, whether it happens or not, we hope it does. But they're listening and they're open-minded, and I appreciate that with both Chancellor Edelman and Krista.
Absolutely. Well, Bruce, I want to thank you very much, and
You bet, Rick.
congratulations on your 40 years. I hope we get to pick your brain a lot more.
I'm here, and I'm retired. Retired people watch a lot of TV and have a lot of time on their hands and make lots of phone calls.
You told me some of the shows that you watch, but they kind of compete with my old westerns that I watch. So you don't think we can watch the same TV?
I'm big on Ellen.
I heard that.
I'm big on Ellen, and I'm big on Family Feud with Steve Harvey. So, I get a chance to do that. I get a chance to still do some things at Rocky Mountain College and here in town. And
well, I hear
love the
about you having lunch with the basketball coach here and with a football booster there and a basketball booster over here and a track person there. So I think you're still sharing an awful lot of your
it
wisdom.
never goes away, Rick, as you know.
On behalf of the Big Huddle, as chairman, I'm Rick Elmas.